Hey folks, Jeff Salzman here, and welcome to the Daily Evolver. Today, I want to take a look at a topic that has become ever more important in my own life, as I am now within weeks of my 64th birthday.
Yay.
And that is the topic of elderhood. And I'm interested to be getting into this idea of elderhood as being something more than just the senior discount, that it is actually a stage of life. It has its own flavors, it has its own characteristics, its own gifts, its own challenges. And today, I have on the show somebody who has really helped me to think this through and has given a lot of good insight into elderhood as a stage of development. And so I'm happy to welcome to the Daily Evolver, John Mariner. Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks, Jeff.
Good to have you with us.
Yay.
So, John, you've been a philosopher, a social worker, an integral psychotherapist, still working. And you've been into integral theory for 20 some years, into Ken Wilber. And over this period, you have developed this insight into elderhood through your own journey. So why don't you tell us just a little bit about that?
Well, there are lots of entries into this. My own journey, I think, into elderhood really started about 10 years ago. I began to become familiar with the world elders, the work of Nelson Mandela and other world leaders who were looking at elders as important in terms of caring about the younger people of this world. And that began my thinking about, well, I was entering this new stage of life is how I see it. And I see the life stage of elderhood in a way paralleling the developmental stage of integral that I was also working with.
Mm-hmm.
The consciousness stage of integral and the life stage of elderhood began to come more and more together to me and to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It does to me too. In fact, you and I may have talked about this, but I often think of the integral stage as being, you could feel into it by feeling into what it is to be a grandparent. Because you can see the sort of whole crazy family. And, they're all doing their things, and some of them are little and some of them are teenagers and the adolescents and even the crazy adults. Mm-hmm. And you've been through it all. You were gripped by all of it just as they are now, but somehow you've been relieved of some of it. And you have, we've talked about it for centuries, wisdom, millennia, this idea of wisdom that comes online as an old person. And that's it. That happens naturally if you get that far. Now, some people can be old and not get that far, and some people seem to get it younger.
Yeah.
But it is a distinct flavor of being friendly to the whole spiral of development, essentially, which is characteristic of integral.
Yes. And I think the emergence of elderhood becomes clearer at integral. I think the earliest stages, certainly knew about elders, but elderhood as an emerging life stage, I think is becoming clearer and clearer now. And I believe that integral insight and consciousness helps the wearing of this of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How would you describe elderhood, or what are some of the characteristics that come to mind when you think about it?
Some of the characteristics that come to mind, I think particularly of elderhood as the stage where you begin to know that you care about the youngers of this world even more in some ways than you care about yourself. You care about the future. And I think that elders, while hopefully we often live in the moment, but we live future oriented,
Mm-hmm.
thinking and living for this these generations that we love, but we won't live to see
Mm-hmm.
in our own.
Yeah, and that's inspiring to me, and I can sort of even feel into that. And it's interesting. This morning I was watching the news show that Morning Joe, and and they had coverage from these young people from this Florida shooting who went to Washington, and they were speaking. And John, I never saw, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. These kids were lit up.
Yes.
And there were 2 or 3 of them. And I actually taped them because I wanted to play them on some future show. And I think this is it. Because they have a poise, they have a wisdom, they have a sort of a flow that I would normally expect to see in older people, honestly. And there they were, and it was very inspiring, and to actually know that these people are going to take over. And I want to say this about them. These are 17-year-olds. When I was 17-year-old, I would never have been able to do what these kids did.
Yeah.
Nor do I know of any kid then who could have. So this is feels like something new. There's something coming on earlier in the culture than it has before.
Yes.
So I want to actually pour my attention into them in any way that I can, really, even just in a sort of a tonglen or a feeling into the energetically and so forth. And I want to support them, and that becomes really exciting, right?
Yes. And I think at Elderhood, we really hold that very special too. We really care about these younger people, and say, yes, right on. We want to support you any way we can, and also recognize that that wisdom isn't just limited to elderhood. Like you say, Jeff, there's a tremendous amount of wisdom in these kids too. Beginning to articulate, wait a minute, we have to look at what makes sense and what doesn't make sense in this world.
Yeah. No, I used to think about that I didn't want to die because I wanted to see what Apple would come up with next. Now I don't want to die because I want to see what these kids do.
Yeah.
But maybe we will see it.
Yes.
So let me just shift gears into that territory. So here I'm 64. You're 70?
76.
76. Okay, so closer to the end than the beginning. How do you feel about death and illness and debilitation and all of that side of the street that comes with elderhood?
Jeff was funny. I recently wrote a piece I called Elderhood and the Fountain of Youth. Of all things, I was thinking about that it had only taken me 70 plus years to discover the fountain of youth. And I began to just think about this, this mythical fountain as a place that finally became more fully present to me at Elderhood, of all places. It's like, wow, this consciousness of both, our the loss of some faculties and some abilities as we get older, but the development of consciousness and spirit, and seeing things wider and broader, was one of the gifts of elderhood. This expansion of awareness and
yes. And even subtle body, if you will. I mean, one of the things that's clear is that our physical bodies deteriorate as we get old. It seems to be an accelerating process, with all due respect. Anyway, so, I think, so where am I evolving on the somatic scale, and I realized that, what integral theory, and, thank you, Ken.
Yes.
This idea of the physical body, the subtle body, which is the energy body, and includes all sorts of things, that are known and unknown, and we sort of feel our way into, and then consciousness as a causal body.
Yes.
And that's where the action is. As the physical body, starts on the way out.
Yes. Yeah. And that, to me, that is so exciting. But I don't think you automatically get to elderhood just because you get old. And that's important.
Yeah.
I think that elderhood, getting there means doing your work of waking up and growing up and showing up and cleaning up, in adulthood, beginning that process in middle and late adulthood. If you're going to get to elderhood and not just old age, and there's nothing wrong with old age, but that consciousness isn't necessarily there.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I think old age would be a drag without having that consciousness there.
Exactly.
And it is a drag for a lot of people.
Yes.
And it's nice to have this, sort of other opportunity. So to get back to your personal journey, John, you say that this really happened for you at 70. I mean, there was a shift. Yeah. So, talk to me about before and after. And, you were in your 60s and still, not really where you are now. So
I was parenting my daughter, and I was about 70 something when she turned, I think she was maybe 14 at the time. And I suddenly could look around a little bit more because I was an old parent, and in terms of starting parenting late. But so I began to look around and say, well, all right, she's more and more independent, and that process is beginning to happen. Who am I now? And I think a lot of older people go through that kind of piece when, at the end of the old careers, perhaps retirement, that question begins to come up in a new way, a new energy. Well, who am I now? And there was a period of time where I really just struggled with that, and it began to realize that I was moving into this new stage. And one of the things I think that's important, Jeff, is that elderhood is an emerging life stage. It follows adulthood like adulthood follows childhood and adolescence. And it transcends and includes adulthood, but it's not the same as adulthood. There really are, again, distinguishing factors of it. And I've mentioned, some of them, that sense of living in the future, that concern for youngers, that if you like, that spiritual growth that hopefully starts in adulthood, but continues and expands and grows, which has been wonderful to experience that.
And tell me about that. What's the spiritual growth that you're experiencing?
It's more and more the sense of really feeling at one with all of the people of this world. This feeling that I am one with them. This, I guess you call it this, in a sense, this unity consciousness that's just, oh my God. And this enlightened sense of this enlightened self-interest. That self-interest expands and expands and expands and through elderhood till it includes everyone. And I think all sentient beings, caring for all. And
the self expands, and it's all of a sudden I'm not identifying with just that your phone?
I don't know. Oh, Suzanne's running away.
That's all right. But I expand where I'm not just concerned with measly Jeff or in my family or my nation,
Little
but the
John.
whole world, exactly. And then at that point, you're getting into an identity that transcends death.
And yes, and coming into that beginning, wow, that for me was part of this. Who am I now? I'm not identifying so much with this earlier places the life I had before, and I'm not familiar yet with this new emerging place that's beginning to come into existence for me in my life. But I knew, for instance, Erik Erikson's work, Little Stage of Life on integrity. Well, I've been thinking about it. It's integral versus despair.
Yeah.
that integral, in a sense, the consciousness of integral really helps with that work of deeper and expanded integrity.
John, we had a little glitch technically, so why don't you rewind back to Erik Erikson because his stuff on Elderhood is go on.
Yeah, Erikson wrote about the different stages of life stages, and the final stage of life he described was integrity or despair. But he didn't talk much about how you actually got there. A little bit, but at that time, he was writing in the 1950s, and the consciousness of integral wasn't there in the same way. Right. He didn't have that piece, but he did have the sense of you have to keep growing all your life and moving through the work of the earlier stages, doing the work of adulthood, and to get there, if you're going to get to this place of a feeling of deeper and deeper integrity versus the despair, I think that too many older people feel. But I think that part of that, journey to that integrity is to integral consciousness, the work of integral consciousness. And yet that's still pretty new. I don't think you have to know about integral.
Right. No, and that's for sure. Did Erikson talk about a stage that is comparable to integral?
Well, he called it. He would have called it, I think, the integrity.
Uh-huh.
That would have been
close enough.
Close enough. What he was thinking about and talking about at the time.
Right. Yeah.
It was a great insight into that there was a stage that was emerging that I'm calling elderhood.
Yeah.
That is
as different from adulthood as adulthood is from adolescence. And
yes.
and actually, if you look at just the evolution of culture and how we think about things, there's a stage now of 20 to 27 that is a young adult stage that feels distinct from a later adult stage.
Yes.
More experimental, less committed, less weighed down, and that's cool to see. And if you look at history, you realize adolescence was a stage that didn't exist a couple hundred years ago.
No, like childhood didn't.
Childhood didn't, for that matter. You just went to work as soon as you could, however you could, and so hallelujah that we get to see this. This life that we have, this precious gift in this more expanded way, and know that we have this beautiful stage at the end.
I tell you, yes, that's what's so exciting to me, Jeff. That I experienced that, and I experienced the movement into that, and I think many people are, whether they have the language of integral or not, they're moving into this stage. But I think, here's one of the challenges. I think that many people never grow into full adulthood. And there's a tragedy there, because if you don't grow into full adulthood, I don't know that elderhood is easily or or readily accessible to you.
Yeah. Yeah, tell me about that. So adulthood has its characteristics,
Yes.
and some people really don't fully inhabit them. And they say sort of cycling these sort of typically young person problems.
Yes.
And so, so how would you describe that?
Well, I think that so many people stay a lot in what I think of as adapted child. I'm following, in a sense, the work of a woman named Pia Melody here, who I have a lot of respect for, who talked about a natural child, wounded child, an adapted child. An adapted child masquerades as our adult. You can become president of the United States from adapted child.
No, don't be silly.
Well, we saw it.
I'm afraid so.
So that adapted child part of us that we all need to work with, I mean, it's part of the cleaning up part, masquerades, as I said, as adult for all of us to a little extent, and for many people, for much of their lives and much of their existence, that they don't really get to conscious adulthood because they don't do their work enough, and there's many ways of doing our work. There certainly isn't just one way, but you have to do it.
Mm-hmm. How would you describe that work? What is that transformation?
Now, into adulthood, it is the process of, I need to wake up one piece. I need to begin to wake up that I can't just stay with my earlier ways of looking at things, my earlier conceptual ways of thinking about religion or thinking about the world. That has to begin to say, wow, this is a bigger world, much wider world than I originally thought. And then the painful and wonderful work of growing up. I need to grow up. I need to take the challenges of my life that are brought with me through relationships, with friends, with a partner, with that stuff. And I need to keep growing. I need to not let myself just give up or stop. Choosing never to give up is really important in that way. And then this involves the work of cleaning up, which is the work I've been doing as a psychotherapist, helping people, doing my own work for sure, for many years, but helping people clean up the earlier pieces that stick us and get stuck. Ken talks about that work of cleaning up and the importance of that, doing our shadow work and recognizing the power of our shadows. So all of that, Jeff, is some of how I think about, the work of adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah. And until that's installed in a way, you really aren't going to move in any stable way to elderhood, which has its characteristics of equanimity then. And in some ways enjoying what one built in adulthood, because adulthood is a building stage, and have yes.
Growing older, my God, losing changing physical abilities, and
yes,
all of that.
Yeah. It's funny. I have the strangest, I haven't had any big debilities. So this is a provisional statement and I reserve the right to rescind it. But so far, what I've lost feels like a relief.
Yeah.
In a way. I mean, I know I'm not going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro now. Yeah. And I'm good with that. And I couldn't have said that 20 years ago. And there's something that is liberating in the limitations that Ken would talk about that we can liberate things by limiting them. Because all of a sudden they say, okay, this is what I have. I have this life and I have this much left of it. and I'm in this world, and it actually matters what I do.
Yes.
And that's exciting.
Oh, it's so exciting, Jeff. That's why I kind of refer to it, as discovering the fountain of youth. Which
Yeah.
is, you could say that's crazy talk. Here you are, you old codger. You know what I mean? But no, the sense of this freedom.
Yeah.
The freedom of letting go of what I need to let go of, and expanding what I want to keep growing and expanding in. There's a lot of freedom and fullness in that process.
Yeah. Now, are you seeing any? Do you have a group, or is there any people that you're working with this on, or anything like that?
Yeah, I've been really blessed in those ways, Jeff. I have a partner at work, a woman named Mary. Mary and I have worked together for 40 years and are able to really do this dance together. She's very different from me and thinks differently, but together we've been putting these thoughts together. I also have started a group that meets on Monday mornings, who are exploring the intersection of the integral consciousness and elderhood as a stage of life. So that's been a lot of fun talking. Yeah. Wow, what is this? Because it really is still emerging, and I don't think we have, we don't have a really clear picture of elderhood yet as this distinct stage of life.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But what fun to be working on it. I mean, what could be more exciting than that? So that's cool. And so this group is, doing some of the basic science, if you will, and really just looking at it consciously.
Yes, looking at it consciously. And, Ken says, thoughts are actual structures of the universe. And I believe that.
Yeah.
And thinking about what we're doing, how we're beginning to look at how this is different for each of us, as well as similar. What is each person's, entry into elderhood? For me, it was definitely a sense of a new stage. You know what I mean? A transformation. I think other people may just step into it more gradually. There isn't one way that you get there, but I do think you don't get there without doing your earlier work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do think that knowing it really helps us get there.
Exactly.
It's just like all of a sudden I'm consciously incompetent instead of unconsciously incompetent. And I can see that there's a new thing that's being called forth, and that I know that that's true. It's supposed to happen. Other people have done it. They've mapped out the territory.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And it becomes normative in the sense that there now are ways of recognizing some of the pieces of what this new stage, what this emerging stage looks like.
Yeah. So I have one more question. So what happens when we die, John?
Yeah.
Do you think?
Jeff, I don't know, but I think I'm kind of with Socrates on that one. Socrates saying, well, I don't know what's beyond this, but wow, I really am excited to find out.
Oh man, hallelujah. Me too. That's about, I couldn't say it any better. It just feels like I trust the system. I don't know, but so far so good.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, John, is there any place people who might want to know more could go? Do you have a website or anything that we might check out?
Yeah. The website would be the Relationship Resource Center, www.relationshipresourcecenter.com. And my email is htbdragons@gmail.com.
Here there be dragons.
Yes.
htbdragons@gmail.com.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, John Mariner, for joining us today and sharing your wisdom about wisdom and elderhood. So we appreciate it.
Take care.
Bye, folks.